All right, so time to grab my tinfoil hat. Yep, sorry people. I know that's gonna tick some folks off, but it's 2020, and I'm looking for some news. I'm looking for some groundbreaking news, and this is it right here. Tex-it, ladies and gentlemen. You've heard of Brexit? Well, you've got Tex-it. Lone Star State congressman plans to file bill for Texas to secede from the U.S. And I say, what took y'all so long? Now, before you think this is crazy talk, before you think this can't happen, think again. I say it can happen and should happen because I think Texas would do much better without Washington, D.C. getting in their way. Especially since the country and other states don't know how to run clean and fair elections. Just throwing it in there. I know people don't want to hear that. They think everything's hunky-dory. They think everything's on the up and up. Well, it's not. And before you just dismiss the idea sort of out of hand, has anyone ever read the Declaration of Independence? Yeah. Well, in the preamble here, there are a few words that, this first paragraph, actually, if you want to be precise about it, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. That last sentence is more out of just being courteous, diplomatic. Well, we'll tell you why we're ticked off. The beginning of this is, well, you're going along and it's kind of like a divorce. Just like, you know what? Time to dissolve. Time to just get our rights and our freedoms from either nature or nature's God. So you atheists are covered there, and you theists or deists, you guys are covered there as well. What it says is you don't get your rights from some bureaucratic governing body, this all-knowing group of people who can tell you to not leave your home and so forth, because they're all now health experts. They can roll out some kind of a vaccine which has never been tested on animals, and vaccines typically have long-term effects which need to be studied before they are introduced to the population at large. Yet this one was put out there with literally zero long-term effects knowledge. So let's get back to the Lone Star State congressman. I might want to move there. I'm really thinking about it, although this might not go anywhere, but it is delicious reading, I have to say. And I'm not too hungry for words, but this is good stuff. A representative in the Texas legislature has floated the idea of seceding from the U.S. through a bill he plans to introduce. His name is State Rep. Kyle Biderman, and he is my hero, although I wish he would leave the Republican Party because they are spineless, gutless, don't care if elections are run freely, don't care if they're run cleanly. Republicans want to cover things up just as much as Democrats do. So really the two-party paradigm. And by the way, you libertarians, this is a nice place for you guys to step in here. If you became vocal critics rather than saying things like, well, let's just regroup and come back next time around. Do you think you have any chance at winning anything if the election system is the way it is and remains the way it is? As a libertarian? Same with the Green Party, too. I'm just making sure I cover everybody. What we need is a political party that is reformed, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. You might be able to reform the Republican Party, but I think you'd be better off in something like the Independence Party, declaring my independence from the two loser parties. Biderman claims that the federal government is out of control. Well, duh. And does not represent the values of Texans as his reason for filing the secession proposal. Now, the independent streak that most people have, I think, needs to be exploited, and secession would be a great idea based on just the notion that people are tired of the left-right paradigm. They know that these elections in other states essentially canceled their vote, thus violating the Equal Protection Clause in the Constitution, which apparently nobody cares about, including state, circuit, and federal judges. They don't care. I mean, when you get to the circuit court, are you even told about the Constitution? I know the local courts, the state courts, they don't give a crap about the Constitution. Anyway, his proposed bill aligns with the Texas Constitution, which states that Texans have at all times the inalienable right, easy for me to say, to alter, reform, or abolish their government. Sounds pretty straightforward to me. If the bill is filed, the referendum will permit Texans to vote to reassert its status as an independent nation. I don't know, that's given me some goosebumps. An independent nation. That would be sweet. Do I think it's possible? Yeah. He did not offer more specifics about his proposed legislation, which is yet to be filed as of writing. Nevertheless, he committed to authoring the bill and introducing it in the 2021 legislative session to start in January. Of course, they say here, Texas seceding from the U.S. would be a legal mountain to climb. Secession would be potentially illegal because the Supreme Court. Here, I can't get out of this contract that this Supreme Court is keeping me in, and I've got to have them rule on if I can get out of the contract. You see the difficulty there? It's pretty simple to figure this out. 1869 Texas versus White, that the state is an indissoluble relation. You can't get out of the contract. That has no spirit of 1776. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with one another, to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. Power is not given through the courts, it's given through the Creator. It's given through nature. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that they couldn't get out of the contract. I'm just trying to reiterate the obvious here. The ruling further mentions the union between Texas and the other states was as complete, as perpetual, and look, because the other states went in first, like the 13 original colonies, so even though they came along later, they're as strong as the 13 colonies. Well, who says the 13 colonies have to stay together? Who's to say any of the so-called United States? Really? They're not. It's not united. We're not united. We are divided. Might as well divide for real. Might as well get away from the metaphor. So they're basically saying that, even though Texas joined later, and they were kind of like their own country before they joined, doesn't matter. They still can't get out of this. They can't revoke it, except through revolution. So essentially the court said, if you start a war or consent to the states, the other thing is the other states have to agree. Now, would the other states agree? That's interesting. In addition, the ruling states that the ordinance of secession, ratified by a majority of the citizens of Texas and all the acts of its legislature intended to give effect to that ordinance, were absolutely null. Well, that doesn't sound like states' rights or the 10th Amendment or the spirit of 1776. Thus, any referendum such as the one Biderman intends through his bill would be utterly without operation in law. All right, translation. what this means is because we, the giant state, the big state, the deep state, the Supreme Court state, we say no, you can't have your independence, even though that's why our country was founded in the first place. You can't use the founding principles found in the Declaration of Independence to circumvent what the courts have already decided. Even in 1869, we said you can't leave. Even though you don't like it here, you still can't leave. Even though the Equal Protection Clause of the United States Constitution was certainly violated during this last so-called election, doesn't matter. We, the people of the Supreme Court, of the legislative and judicial branches and executive branch, say, not so fast. You can't leave, even though, again, this is what happened at the very beginning of the foundation of the country. So, to sum up, do I think this is going anywhere? I don't know. I mean, just because the media says it's not going anywhere, just because some constitutional scholar says it's not going anywhere, I mean, we had a bunch of people interviewed on our local news station about Florida being, out of the Union. Secession talk here in Florida, it's out there. It's probably not as strong as Texas, but a bunch of people on the street said, yeah, I'd like to get out. And then they said, well, what about the military? You can easily get together a state militia. You can certainly put together a state-run or a country-run military fairly quickly. All right? Fairly quickly. I mean, if you got to give everything back to the so-called United States of America, all the hardware that is stationed, what about all those military bases? You could quickly change them into military bases that represent your country. And I don't think it would be that hard of a transition. People would have to get used to the idea. And then obviously you've got travel between countries. You'd have checkpoints. You'd have passports. It might be interesting. I think this is an interesting idea. And I think a lot of folks have been pushed up against the wall. And I think they're running out of ideas. There's no remedy at the court. There's no remedy at the legislature. There's no remedy. So why not just get out of it and start your own Galt's Gulch? You know, hey, I read Atlas Shrugged. Time to go to Galt's Gulch. It's time, folks. There's nothing else here. There's nothing else here. You could do your own economic petri dish and run your country at full tilt and employ lots of people and make things again and, build industries. And by the way, you might attract companies and industries from other parts of the world, including the other so-called United States. People who are fleeing California, many of them are going to Texas and other parts of the country, and they're doing it because business is better in those other states, and they're business friendly. So again, Texas, a huge land mass, could certainly be its own country, and I would probably move there if this law actually happened.